Prepare to be disturbed. Tonight, we're revealing 3 genuine, horrifying discoveries made in abandoned places that will make you reconsider exploring forgotten buildings. From unsettling personal effects left exactly as they were, to inexplicable scenes frozen in time, these are the chilling realities found by those brave enough to venture into the desolate unknown. Welcome, urban explorers, to a new episode of Untold Nightmares. Tonight, October 13th, we delve into the most disturbing discoveries made in places the world would rather forget. Places where time stood still in ways that defy all logic. What you're about to hear isn't just urban legends or fabricated tales meant to scare you. These are real, documented accounts from people who dared to cross the threshold of the abandoned and found much more than they expected. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about forgotten places. Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what's gone, but what's decided to stay. Turn off the lights. Turn up the volume. And prepare to step into the shadows of the abandoned. Our first case takes us to the Willowbrook State Asylum, officially closed in 1987 after decades of complaints of abuse and inhumane conditions. A 5-story building on the outskirts of Massachusetts, more than 3,000 patients lived confined between brick walls and rusty bars. In March 2023, a group of urban explorers led by Marcus Chun decided to document the deterioration of the site. What began as a routine photography expedition turned into one of the most disturbing experiences of their lives. The group entered at dawn, armed with cameras, flashlights, and respirators. The first 3 floors showed exactly what was expected: overturned wheelchairs, medical records scattered on the floor, beds with restraints still intact. The air smelled of mold and neglect. But it was on the 4th floor where everything changed. Marcus was the first to notice something strange. One of the rooms, room 412, had a slightly ajar door. Not forced, not broken, just open, as if someone had just left. Upon entering, they found something that shouldn't have been there. The room was clean. There was no accumulated dust like the rest of the building. On the nightstand sat a cup with dregs of instant coffee, coffee that couldn't have been more than a few days old. Next to the cup was a half-eaten packet of cookies, with an expiration date of that same month. Sarah, another member of the group, found something even more disturbing in the closet: clothes. Not 1980s hospital uniforms, but modern clothes. Jeans, sweatshirts with current brand logos, worn but contemporary sneakers. All in adult sizes. On the wall were new photographs. Recent Polaroids of the asylum's hallways, taken from perspectives that suggested the person taking them knew the building intimately. In one of them, barely visible in the reflection of a window, a human silhouette could be made out. But what truly chilled the group's blood was Marcus's discovery in the bedside drawer. A spiral notebook with recent notes. The entries dated back 6 months. The first few pages were relatively uneventful. Reflections of someone who had decided to live in the abandoned asylum, escaping a life he described as unbearable outside. But as the entries progressed, the tone changed. I hear them at night. The ones who never left. They walk the halls. Sometimes they cry. Other times they laugh. I found an open door in the basement today. I'm sure it was closed yesterday. I'm not going down there. There's something wrong down there. I'm not alone anymore. There are others. I've seen them from my window. They come in at night. I don't know what they're looking for, but I dread the day they find me. The last entry was dated just 3 days before Marcus's exploration. I made a mistake. I went down to the basement. I saw the secret rooms. Now I know why this place should never have been found. They know I know. Tonight I heard footsteps outside my door. Footsteps that stopped right in front of my room. They didn't go away. They're still there. The notebook ended abruptly. Marcus and his team left the room in complete silence. That's when they heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from upstairs. The group left the asylum without looking back. Marcus's cameras captured everything, including a final shot as they left. The window of room 412, where a human figure was looking at them through the broken glass. Marcus reported the discovery to the local authorities. When the police investigated 2 days later, room 412 was completely empty. There was no cup, no clothes, no notebook. Just dust and neglect, like the rest of the building. But on the wall, written in what appeared to be dried blood, they found a message. Some of U.S. never leave. Beneath Seattle's bustling streets lies a world few know about, an intricate system of tunnels built in the late 19th century. Most have been mapped, cataloged, and some have even become tourist attractions. But not all tunnels are on the maps. Jake Thornton, a 34-year-old civil engineer with a penchant for urban exploration, discovered this in the most disturbing way possible in August 2024. Jake had been exploring a section of the tunnels near the Pioneer Square district, documenting structural cracks for a personal project. He'd been underground for over 4 hours when his flashlight illuminated something peculiar, a brick wall that didn't match the construction pattern of the rest of the tunnel. The bricks were newer, perhaps from the mid-20th century, and had been hastily laid. Some sections showed gaps between the bricks, as if someone had hurriedly caulked something. Curiosity overcame common sense. Jake began removing the loose bricks. Behind the wall was a narrow passage that descended at a steep angle. The air emanating from it was different. Cold, damp, with the smell of stale incense mixed with something rotting. Jake followed the passage for nearly 20 minutes, descending deeper and deeper. The walls began to show strange markings, carved symbols he didn't recognize, engraved dates dating back to 1952, and Latin phrases that Jake photographed but couldn't translate at the time. The passage ended in a circular chamber approximately 10 meters in diameter. What Jake found there haunts him to this day. In the center of the chamber was a stone table, clearly carved for ceremonial purposes. Around the table, arranged in a perfect circle, were 13 wooden chairs carved with symbols identical to those on the walls. But the most disturbing thing was the objects on the table. Masks. Dozens of masks of different styles and eras. Some looked Venetian, others resembled African tribal masks, and some were simply expressionless human faces, disturbingly lifelike, all oriented toward a central point where a black leather-bound book rested. Jake, against all survival instinct, opened the book. The pages were filled with names, dates, and symbols. Each page seemed to record some sort of meeting or ceremony. The names were varied, some clearly American, others European, some that sounded like elaborate pseudonyms. The last entry was dated just 2 weeks before Jake's visit. The names were listed, 13 in total, followed by a note in English that read, "The 14th will come when it's time. Walls have ears. Silence has teeth." Jake photographed everything he could, but when he tried to take the book with him, something in the camera changed. The candles on the table, candles Jake hadn't noticed before because they were unlit, suddenly all lit up at once. There was no one else in the chamber. There was no draft. There was no explanation. Jake ran, stumbling in the darkness of the return passage. When he finally surfaced, dawn had broken. More than 12 hours had passed, although Jake swore he'd only been underground for 6 at most. He tried to report his discovery, but when authorities checked the coordinates Jake provided, they found no sealed wall. The passageway didn't exist. Or, at least, it no longer existed visibly. Jake gave up urban exploration after that. But every year, on the 13th of the month, he receives a text message from an unknown number. The message is always the same. "We know where you found it. Don't come back." The 14th spot is still waiting. 40 miles from Missoula, Montana, on a dirt road that barely appears on Google Maps, lies what remains of the Holloway farm. The family that lived there disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1998, and since then, the place has remained untouched, as if frozen in time. Or so everyone thought until Emily Vance, a 28-year-old photographer specializing in abandoned architecture, decided to document the site in September 2024. Emily arrived at noon, expecting to find the decrepit, vandalized structure typical of abandoned rural properties. Instead, she found something completely different. The house was closed but not secured. The front door opened with a simple turn of the handle. The interior smelled of old wood and stagnant air, but not the overwhelming mildew Emily expected. The furniture was covered with white sheets, as if the inhabitants had planned to return soon. In the kitchen, clean dishes waited in the drainer. A 1998 calendar hung on the wall, frozen in October of that year. Emily explored the ground floor without finding anything particularly unusual. It was when she climbed the stairs that everything changed. On the second floor, there were 3 rooms. 2 were empty and covered in dust. The third, at the end of the hallway, had a locked door. Emily used a makeshift lockpick made from a hairpin, a skill she had learned specifically for these explorations. The room opened to reveal something impossible. There was no dust. The air smelled of fresh lavender. The bed was made with clean sheets. On the nightstand was a glass of water, crystal clear water that showed no signs of evaporation or contamination. But the most disturbing thing was the desk by the window. On it rested a brown leather-bound journal, open to a page dated that same month, September 2024. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. With trembling hands, she began to read. The first entries dated back to October 1998. They were written by Margaret Holloway, the matriarch of the missing family. She described the daily routine on the farm, meals, chores. Everything was normal, but by mid-October, the tone changed. Something's wrong with the barn. The animals won't go in. Henry says I'm superstitious, but I swear I hear whispers coming from there at night. Henry finally checked the barn. He found a door in the cellar that none of us knew existed. When I asked him what was on the other side, he turned pale and told me to forget it. That night, he packed suitcases for the children. We were going to leave tomorrow. But tonight we heard knocks on all the doors simultaneously. When we opened them, no one was there. Now we can't get out. The doors don't open from the inside. The windows don't break. It's as if the house itself is holding us back. The last entry from October 1998 was chilling. Henry and the children are gone. I don't know how, but this morning their beds were empty. I searched the whole house. They're not there. But I heard their voices last night calling me from the barn. I'm not going. I can't go. Something tells me if I go, I'll disappear too. Emily hoped the diary would end there. But no. She turned the page. The following entry was dated March 2003. 5 years later. I've been alone for a long time. Or maybe not. Sometimes I see shadows that shouldn't exist. The house sustains me. I don't need to eat. I don't age. I'm part of this place now. The entries continued sporadically over the years. 2007, 2011, 2016, 2019. Increasingly fragmented, more erratic, more devoid of humanity. And then, the September 2024 entry. Someone's coming today. I can feel it. The house feels it too. It's excited. It's been a long time since we've had visitors. I hope this time the person will stay. The loneliness is unbearable, even shared with the people who live in the barn. Emily dropped the diary. At that moment, she heard something that chilled her heart. Steps. Going up the stairs. Slow. Deliberate. Accompanied by the sound of something crawling. Emily ran to the door, but it slammed shut in front of her. She tried to open it. It wouldn't budge. The footsteps stopped just outside the room. What happened next, Emily only told once, to the police, before refusing to talk about it again. The door opened slowly. Standing in the doorway was a figure. A woman. Or what had once been a woman. Her skin was translucent, almost gray. Her eyes were completely white. She was wearing a 1990s nightgown. The thing that had been Margaret Holloway spoke in a voice that sounded as if it came from very far away. Please stay. The house is hungry. And I'm so tired of being alone. Emily doesn't remember how she escaped. Her next clear memory is of driving down the main road, her camera smashed on the passenger seat, the photographs erased or corrupted. But on her phone in the gallery, there was a photo she didn't remember taking. It was a selfie. Emily in the upstairs bedroom. And behind her, barely visible in the reflection of the window, was the gray figure of Margaret Holloway, smiling. Emily sold everything and moved across the country. But every night, without fail, she receives a call from an unidentifiable number. When she answers, she hears only silence, and in the background, the sound of someone writing in a journal. These 3 cases, fully documented and verified to the extent circumstances allowed, remind us of something fundamental. Abandoned places are not always empty. Sometimes, what's left behind has a reason to remain. Unfinished stories, presences that refuse to leave, or worse, entities patiently awaiting the next visit. The question that haunts us is inevitable. What would you do if, during an exploration, you found evidence that you weren't alone? If you discovered that the abandoned place you were exploring was never really abandoned? Marcus Chin no longer explores buildings. Jake Thornton changed careers. Emily Vance left abandoned photography for good. They all crossed a threshold they shouldn't have crossed. They discovered truths that were better hidden. The next time you see an abandoned building, a sealed driveway, or a property that time seems to have forgotten, ask yourself, is it really abandoned? Or is it just waiting? If you've had your own disturbing experience in forgotten places, share it in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next stories. And remember, some places are abandoned for a reason. Until next time, if there is a next time, this has been Untold Nightmares. Good night, and be careful where you choose to explore.